Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young. This is a weekly podcast where we explore the strengths we have because of our sensitivity and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional.
Hey there. To the creatives, healers, sensitives, and deep thinkers, how the heck are you? We are screaming into December now. So how's the weather? Are you getting ready for the holiday? I've just decided I'm not going to talk too much about what's going on in the world, the holidays, just because. So anyways, how are you? This is the first time that Jen and I have recorded together in a month. We've just had a lot of things going on. And we pick up, and I'm pretty sure it's episode 217 where I was in Philly with Jen, and Jen mentions this enamored sense that I had with her sort of disappeared. I still don't have a lot of great language about it, but we talked about that, and we had a day that was really challenging. We had competing needs. We both had very different things going on. Neither one was right or wrong. I love that Jen is willing to come on the podcast and talk about the challenges that we have, because I know for a fact that this type of story that we share, y'all all have experienced something. The context, the person may be different, but when you have needs and another person has needs and you don't get your needs met and they don't get their needs met, and how do you navigate through that? And can you talk about it? And can you have compassion for it? And what are the things that come up for you? And at the end of the day, I ended up getting pretty dysregulated, and I share with you what that looked like and how I navigated it. This is just what's going to happen if you've got a finely tuned nervous system. If you're neurodivergent, this is what we go through. I wasn't going to talk about this, but I guess I'm going to take some time and talk about it. So let's name what's going on in the room. I imagine that there are three groups of people that listen to the podcast. One are longtime listeners that identify as highly sensitive, have been here from the beginning or picked up at some point. And now I'm talking about being autistic, my ADHD, and having a PDA profile. And you may be feeling disenfranchised. You may identify yourself in the stories that I tell, but I'm labeling it. And you may be wondering, well, where do I fit in? And it may feel frustrating, disappointing. It may feel like I'm betraying because you came here to listen to HSPs. And now I'm talking about autism. Then I suspect there's a second group that you came here as HSPs. And as I'm talking about autism, you're going, that kind of sounds a little bit like me. And now you're in this questioning place of, am I autistic? Am I HSP? Is it important for me to find out? Is it not important for me to find out? And thirdly, if I haven't lost the autistics yet, because there is a lot of controversy in the autism community and the HSP community, there's just a division. And if you are autistic, you're probably wondering, Patricia, why the heck are you talking about HSPs? I'm here to hear about autism. And I noticed during this episode that I did not label the things that I often will label related to my autism, my ADHD, my PDA, pathological demand avoidance, which is a horrible name that the DSM came up with, or whoever came up with the DSM. And so I want to name what it's called, but I'm not okay identifying with a label that's pathologizing, that has the word pathology in it. It's a nervous system dysregulation. So I am going to say pervasive or persistent drive for autonomy. It's the same thing with me choosing to identify as autistic as opposed to autistic spectrum disorder. It's not a disorder. Spectrum implies that it's linear, that you're less or more autistic, and that is not true. It's really like a pie, and we often have a very spiky profile. So there are areas where you see me show up or where I have strengths. What you don't see is the areas where I don't have strengths and where I really struggle. And if I didn't have a husband who manages all the things that he does, I don't think I'd be able to be here doing what I'm doing. I have a very spiky profile. I'm just able to play to my strengths because my husband manages the things that are really challenging for me, and my energy doesn't have to go to those things. And so I'm really struggling as I record for you, the listener, who am I speaking to? And if I use the term neurodivergent, does everybody feel seen and heard? And I just don't have an answer for you. And what I can tell you is at this point in my process, having been formally diagnosed, less than 3 months ago. I suspected I was autistic for probably a year and a half. So it's not that this is new to me, but the formal diagnosis really shifted something for me. I'm in this place of, I want to identify and label what goes on for me. It helps me understand myself. It helps me reframe things that I've been experiencing. And I really worry about losing listeners, disenfranchising listeners. And I don't know how to meet everybody's needs. I can't. And I'm going to talk about this struggle as long as I need to talk about it. And what I started out was, and I've really talked about it already, as a longtime listener is feeling like, where do I fit in now? Because you're using all these new labels and those labels don't fit for me. And I feel like I'm being left behind. And it is never my intention to have anybody feel left behind and not included. I don't know how to be in this process and to have everybody feel included. And part of my journey and my passion is for autistics who have been incredibly marginalized and misunderstood, is to have that group of people feel very empowered that there's a place and a name and somebody who identifies with it. So that is what I have to say. I am going to be running a new HSP group. I will tell you about this in the outro. I am just wrapping up a recent HSP group, and somebody who took the course is diagnosed ADHD with a PDA profile just like me, and asked if it was okay for her to take the course. I may have her come on to the podcast. We are doing some collaboration together. It's been a beautiful connection. And if you are autistic or are suspecting that you're autistic, in the last group that we had, somebody identified being autistic during the group. So if the subjects resonate with you for the course, and the videos all say HSP, so you have to have the ability to listen beyond that and substitute the word autistic, because Jen and I made these videos before I even knew I was autistic. It's just an option. Anyways, I think that you will enjoy this episode. I think it's very relatable. I know I say that every time. And now, on to the show. Hey.
We've already blown it.
Hey, Jen. How are you?
Patricia. How am I? Indeed. I am. I'm here. I'm happy to be with you.
I'm happy to be with you. It's been a month. We've not recorded in a month.
Wow. My relationship with time is really not... It feels like it's been a million years and then not, and I feel rusty, but I'm happy. I'm happy to be here with you. I can't believe it's been a month, but yeah, it's been a heck of a month too. So
yeah, it's been a lot. And part of what we're going to talk about today is some of the shifts in our relationship and how we're navigating them. And I think it's really important that we want to be transparent, because I think we don't really get a chance to see what shifts in relationships look like. And I really want to model that for people, to normalize it, to validate that we don't usually see the struggles that people have. We just see the shiny, happy parts. And it's not that we've gone through some shifts and changes. Yes. We have.
I would hope so, actually. Yeah. I mean, the opposite of which is that what we think is this steady, shiny, happy is not only a myth, but it's kind of stagnant, really. Like if you're growing and moving and changing and life is happening and you're in it and messy and real with somebody, it might be bumpy. Better be bumpy.
Well, it's interesting. I always tell people it takes at least a year to get to know someone, but I'm looking at some of the patterns in my relationship, and you and I wish we could figure out. We've known each other either 4.5 or 5.5 years. I'm not sure which it is. And we've done deep work up until now, but we are just starting to get to the point where we've bumped up against having competing needs. We've been in very different spaces. I think we've gone through some, up until now, in my estimation, the hardest things that we've gone through in our relationship. And that's 4.5, 5.5 years in.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And it's important to, I mean, the context of our relationship has always been having lots of space. And then we've made the choice to share a little more space. And that's, I mean, often, keeping in mind that a lot of the bumps are like logistics. And the closer you are, the more you're going to encounter some of these really competing needs. And if you can make sure that you're staying on the same side of the line together, like it's us, again, not against, but, struggling with life as opposed to us struggling with each other. I know that that's been helpful.
Yeah. However, I would say that I don't think we're going to have time to talk about it today. And our intention is to talk about it just because of time. We often don't circle back to things. But once I got back, and it had nothing to do with me being back, I mean, after that, we went through, in my mind, one of the biggest bumps, and that had nothing to do with being in the same space. So I'm not convinced that it's always about being in the same space or not being in the same space. It's just having competing needs and different things going on. Yeah. And I think it was, I should have known which episode it was. I think it's episode 217 that we talked about. I was at your place and we were recording, and then I didn't really want to talk about it. I still don't. About that shift that I had of kind of coming from this place of, I don't even know what the words are, romanticizing, idealizing, feeling like, oh, yummy, 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 our relationship. And it's not that I didn't appreciate our relationship, but that glitter felt like it disappeared some for me. You're making a face. I want to know what you're thinking and feeling.
Because I remember that moment in my kitchen when it was like,
yeah.
And I was like, oh, I guess in my mind, I know that we socially construct each other in our heads. So, one of my meditation practices is to try to see people freshly with fresh eyes and drop all of my preconceived notions about who they are. And I think that's an effort to counteract what you're talking about, which is sort of the glossy, I've buffed out all the rough edges in my interaction with you. And then the closer you get, the harder that becomes a yes to maintain. So while I guess it's a perfect place for parts work, right? Like one part of me was like, wait, what? What? How? Huh? Like, how did I disappoint you? What pedestal was I on? Like, what was I doing up on not a pedestal? That's just a way of expressing the thing that you're trying to talk about.
Right.
But, and then I was like, oof, like, what did you see? Like and I'm not a person that shies away from painful self-reflection. And it's when delivered by someone who loves you, it's sort of that trying to get as authentic and accurate a look at yourself, which should be harrowing because as human beings, we have shadows and we have things about ourselves that we don't necessarily like to share or have seen or have reflected the back. So, and I don't know that we've talked about it in a lot of detail as to what we haven't, but just that it is.
I don't even know that I have language for it. I don't even know that I can name it. It's not like you said or did something, or I can attach it to any behavior or anything you did. It's really hard for me to put words on it. Something that happened internally. And as I'm going through this problem, we weren't going to talk about this, but I guess we are. As I'm going through this process of reframing so many things, is this attachment? Is this my PDA? Is this part of my autism? For me, having that framework and understanding is really, really helpful for me in this place in my journey, having an understanding. And I would suspect that if you are a longtime listener and you're a highly sensitive person and you learned about it's okay to not like to be in groups of people and you may prefer to be one-on-one and you like quieter places and you need downtime, that may have felt like, there's nothing wrong with me. To read about the traits of being a highly sensitive person and then adapting that to your life and maybe looking back over your life where things were difficult and going, oh, that wasn't HS friendly. And that is a really crucial part of our identity and development when we learn about ourselves, or you get married, or you have a child, or you get divorced, or any of those things are going to cause a shift in how we perceive ourselves in the world. This is a very normal part of development. And because I'm able to slow things down and have new awarenesses, I still don't know what it is and I don't have language for it. And so I don't have a lot to offer except for something just shifted. I don't know that it's a bad thing.
I don't think it's a bad thing at all. I mean, it sounds like this thing that I effort towards, right? That mindfulness practice of trying to see the people that and dropping my preconceived notions and how I socially construct them in my head. It sounds like that maybe that's the shift that kind of spontaneously happened for you. Right.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing.
I think that the more room there is for each of us to be separate and individual, the more room there is for us to come together. And I know that I tend to want my close friendships, like I want each of us to be in each other's back pocket. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I have shame saying that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that interdependence is really healthy. Our culture doesn't like that. We're supposed to be staunch and independent and not need people. If you have a nervous system that's wired differently, we need people to help us co-regulate. It's helpful if we can learn distress tolerance, but there's nothing wrong with wanting and needing another person to help us regulate our nervous system. So I think this whole conversation has many, many nuanced layers. And historically, we've been told that we're too much, we need too much. And so there's this also layer of shame that we need to tease out in this conversation.
Yeah.
So should we go to a little bit more content?
Sure.
I'm having very snarky thoughts in the back of my head. Jen and I talked before we recorded, and we're not going to talk about what we talked about, but I'm having some snarky, not about you, Jen.
I'm like, whoa, what's coming at me? No, I'm just kidding. I trust you.
For the listener, I'm sorry that you don't know what it is and it wouldn't be appropriate to share. And I just need to sit with it and process a little bit more, but not in this space. I came to see you on a Tuesday. I got there Tuesday evening. We spent time together. We worked. We decided in the future, we're going to look at our work schedule because it really ended up being problematic that by the time you were done working, I was usually starting to work, and we did not have as much time together, but we also couldn't go out and do things because if we wanted to go somewhere that was a few hours away, we didn't really have time, and that ended up being problematic. So by the time we rolled around to Monday, I was wanting to be able to do more things and it didn't work. And so Monday, my energy was very, very low. Tuesday, and I knew this before I came out, that you had an appointment in the late morning that you were going to need to go to, and I was going to be on my own, which again was totally fine. But the context is, this was towards the end of the trip. I'm tired. We're figuring out what works and what doesn't work. And then you have locks on your house that are they're smart locks. They're controlled by your phone. And we had talked about me downloading the app, and I think I didn't understand something. So I didn't have the app. You were gone at a medical appointment. I didn't want to interrupt you. I called my husband and I'm like, I'm just restless. He's like, you should go out and take a walk. I'm like, but then I can't get back in the house. He's like, just trust that it'll work. Let Jen know when you get home. And you said, text me when you get back. It's fine. So I took the dog for this great walk and I came home and texted you. And I used your Ring doorbell thinking you'd see me get a notification. And it probably took 20 to 25 minutes for you to get back to me. You were in a medical appointment. This was not the time to be unlocking the door. So I wasn't angry about it, but it was like a little frustrating. And do you want to say anything?
I don't think so.
Okay. And then part of what was going on for you is this was a really big deal that was going on. You weren't in a place for the whole day where you were able to process with me because of a number of things. So we didn't have that connection. You had your own things going on. I went to work and I had a break between clients. And so we spent a little bit of time together, but I think you were processing. We didn't have a lot of time and space. I was feeling neglected, like I'd been home all day. I got locked out of the house. I have a little bit of time with you. So I decided to take the dog for another walk. You came with me and we got to spend a little bit of time together. And then I had clients till late and we had some soup that you were going to heat up for me between clients. I said, great. So when I was done working, I texted you, but you didn't have your phone with you. And so I said, I'll be down in a couple of minutes. And I came down and there was no soup for me. And I had just a little bit of time between clients. And I think by this time I was like, are you kidding? That you had your own things going on, no fault, no blame. And I was feeling like this is the third time today. And like, I haven't gotten the attention that I was expecting to get. So I heated up my soup and then you saw your phone and realized that you hadn't gotten the message. I took care of the soup. I went upstairs And my client didn't show, but now I'm feeling dysregulated. Now I think everything's hitting me. And it's not just the day, but I think this is the accumulation of the things that didn't work. And this happens to us. That had one thing happen this day. And think about this for yourself, the listener. One thing is fine. But if you're coming off of not getting sleep, being sick, having a child or partner that's sick, having financial troubles, having car troubles, that when the demands in the environment increase and our ability to cope starts to decrease, we're going to have bigger reactions. So it's not about anything that you did, Janet. This could be any situation, just switch in different elements, and it would have been the same. And I didn't realize, but I was working from your bedroom that evening, and I texted my husband, and he didn't get back to me probably for about 20 minutes. What I didn't realize was that I was dysregulated and I really needed someone right then to respond for me. Oh, I'm feeling tearful. And this is what happens with my PDA. I get dysregulated and I need somebody else's nervous system to ground me, but I don't often recognize that that's what I'm needing. And had I recognized it, there may have been a different outcome, but my husband doesn't keep his phone on him. And so part of our conversation was, when you travel or I travel, I really need you to keep your phone close by, because if I need you, it's really helpful if you're available to me. So that was the outcome, but he just generally doesn't have his phone next to him. And then I got really angry and dysregulated. You and I were sharing a bed. So I had this thing of like, I don't want to be here and I don't want to talk to you. And like, I just got really upset. And like, I can't sleep in a bed with you all night and not talk to you. There's no place to hide. But that's that fight or flight. That's what PDA is. It's fight, flight, fawn, or freeze. And I went into fight or flight. I don't want to be here. I don't want to talk. Nobody's here to meet my needs. That's okay. And I'm sharing this because this happens if you have a PDA profile. It may look different for you. If this resonates for you and you don't identify with being autistic, then if you can ignore the label and just see what fits, that's fine. So I took some time to just get on my phone and regulate. And then I was able to come downstairs, and I was actually very surprised that I was just able to be very present, and those feelings did not come with me. And I think because I allowed them, by the time I came downstairs, I was fine, which really surprised me. And then the next day, you and I had time to process and talk about what this was like for both of us and to have a lot of compassion about it. So I think I want to pause and let you have a chance to talk a little bit.
It's interesting for me because of me learning to be okay disappointing others, and that's survivable and even understandable. So, I mean, it's regretful. In a perfect world, I would have been able to unlock the door, or it would have been smoother for you to have had it. So it's just, I know I have a lot of grace. And I think one word that you said that really sticks out for me is this like allowing our experience, allowing it to be, not trying to push it away, not even trying necessarily to fix it, right? It's because that's more just not allowing. And just the grace that can come out of that. And I know I've been working, I'm not sure how much detail I want to talk about with it, but some cravings that I've been having in PDA. And if I allow and don't make these harsh, rigid rules for myself, instead just sort of ride and be like, well, maybe I'll give into the craving, maybe I won't. It seems to give an openness to the experience where I can like have moments where I'm not having the craving and it's going away all on its own, where it's like the more unwilling I am to have it, the more I'm stuck with it, the more I have it. And I really think that applies to many things, right? Yeah. So the more unwilling I am to have an emotion, like the more here it is. It's just going to sit on me all day. Or to have a dynamic between friends. It's like when that energy of it's not allowed. It's like, well, hello, it's here. And it doesn't there's no bad guy here. It's not anybody's fault. I mean, I have a lot of grace with myself. I was in tears in that medical appointment. I mean, I was like beside myself. And had just come off, both of my kids had issues that Monday and that Tuesday that were at the moment for me as a mom, really big deal. And those can't be scripted or punted or put off for any reason, really. And then I felt so bad about the soup. I mean, that's awful. So So I'm over here on my side of the lived experience and able to say it really sucked for both of us.
For both of us, for different reasons.
And to acknowledge, like, and I don't have to become defensive and double down and be like, and it's funny because it's not, I want to be really honest here. It's not to say I didn't have a couple of thoughts that were like defensive a little bit during that. So my side of it, was like, okay, I'm really sorry, but you got to sit on a lovely porch on a lovely day. And I was in tears and really going through something really big. And so I'm saying that to keep myself really honest on and to be real and authentic about that. And even holding that, allowing that allows me to again move into this space where it's like, yeah, you matter. And that was not a moment where it was clearly evidenced, but that's one data point. And now I'm just going to go with 5-year friendship that has many data points.
Right.
And so again, it's kind of like becoming real. And I don't know, I guess I'll evoke the cliche like Velveteen Rabbit story. It's like you just really, it's two people doing their best, loving each other, being in friendship imperfectly, because we don't have any other choice.
Right. And if you're going to be in relationship with anybody, you will experience frustration, hurt, disappointment, anger, sadness, loneliness. If you don't, there is something wrong. There's something wrong with you. There's something wrong with the other person. There's something wrong with the relationship. And I feel like I'm saying that so adamantly, but I don't know why we don't normalize this, because we're human beings having human experiences. And the more we can know that this is okay and learn to navigate it, the more freedom and intimacy we can have in relationships.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is the reason why I cannot date right now, because I'm trying to learn this. Because my MO, I can really figure out what the other person needs and be that. But I hold that with such rigidity in those relationships that I'm really learning to center. And my kids make it easy because I center them.
Yeah.
But when it comes to just like centering myself, I mean, you've seen me struggle with this. Like I have to, this is the lesson that I'm learning. And if it is full of grace instead of abandonment, instead of off with their heads, it's over. That's really, really important. Even just, taking space is healthy and not abandonment, right? But we need to take that space sometimes to come back with a clear head.
Yeah. Yeah. If you have been in any type of long-term relationship, and I'm speaking from a lived place of marriage, we've been married 26 years. There are seasons that are like the seasons that we live through. There are springs, there are summer, there are falls, there are winters. And there are periods, if you've been in a relationship for a long time, where you question if you want to be in the relationship and that connection is not as strong as it has been, in times when it flourishes and times when it doesn't. And I think what makes a relationship successful long-term is the commitment to stay and work through it, provided that there's not abuse, addiction, things that would make it toxic. So I'm not telling anybody to stay in anything that's not healthy, but provided that it is an average relationship, that commitment to work things through. And sometimes things just have to cool off. And I've had this in friendships too, where I've gotten very activated, very triggered, and I just need some space. And once I've had some space and I kind of get balanced, I can move back into the relationship, maybe the same way, maybe different. But I think we often tend to be like, that's it, I'm over, I'm out of here. And we don't learn how to stay and work through the parts that are hard.
Yeah. And it's so funny. I mean, I know even from my lived experience of having been in a long-term relationship, marriage of 19 years, right? That if you're co-parenting, that relationship still exists. It's just, you've changed.
Yeah, that's a whole different ball of wax.
But you're still in, I think ultimately the divorce kind of was a culmination, was an accurate then reflection of what the relationship had become, and is much healthier now because we co-parent very closely and very collaboratively, and cooperatively.
Yeah,
I'm really
do.
proud of that. I am still proud of that relationship. And so even when it's over, it's not over for many of us, if you with kids. And so what am I trying to say? Like, I'm kind of back to where we started, which is it's not static, it's not stagnant, it's constantly evolving and changing. And these like fresh eyes, well, who are you today and what are you needing? It's just very different. And even doing that internally for ourselves in our inner system.
Yeah.
And the more space, you were saying spaciousness, right? Like allowance. And again, with boundaries, of course. Like this is where, sovereignty comes in. Like this is okay with me. This isn't okay with me. And then this is what I wanted to see. This is what I would like to ask for. But it's a very complex world out there. And the less rigidly, it's so funny. I'm playing with this really sturdy cord and it's bending and it's, but if it was rigid, it would snap, right? That old story. And I know that as an HSP, maybe you can speak to this, identifying as autistic, that we can hold things really rigidly sometimes in that question of like, what am I not allowing? What am I refusing to be in relationship with?
Right. I've had to do a lot of work around those binaries and having a rule in my head or a map in my head about how the world should be and what relationships should look like and what friendships should look like, having boxes for everything. And when things shift and change, especially unexpectedly, that could be challenging. And learning how to navigate those changes, increasing my distress tolerance has been really important, and learning to hold things lightly. And I can remember years ago saying the words of like, it's, it'll be okay. Like somebody cancels or can't come through or disappoint me, and saying like, it's okay. It doesn't feel okay. But saying that over and over and with the belief that it really is okay, even though in my body is telling me otherwise. Because when we have nervous system dysregulation, what often calms us and soothes us is predictability, order, routine, not having things change unexpectedly. That's how we're wired. However, the world doesn't operate that way. And if it works for you to adhere to that and you are not suffering, great. I have no problem with somebody wanting that sameness in their lives. For me, the world does not behave. People do not behave. Systems do not behave the way that I expect them to. And if I choose to try and get people to fit into my expectations, I suffer and the people around me suffer. And it doesn't make for very long-lasting relationships. So a big part of my work has been about how do I learn how to hold those things lightly? How do I take what's going on for me, process it outside of the relationship, if that's appropriate, so that I can learn to trust? And it's hard. I think with age, we also learn that things will work out if we just hold things lightly, that things often work out. There's sometimes something better in store, but we will feel frustrated, angry, disappointed, lonely. Like that's just being human.
Yeah. It's all part of the ride.
Yeah. I think we have a little bit of time. I wanted to just jump ahead to when we were driving back to the airport. Another thing that I've realized for me is I have a hard time assessing whether I've had a good time or not. And I feel like maybe for some people, I guess I'm curious to know, do you know immediately if you've had a good time or not? And what I find is I collect data points and that helps me decide. So would I want to come again for the same amount of time? Would I want to do anything differently? For me, because if I'm dysregulated, food is often how it shows up. If I used other things that, I would have been smoking more, or drinking more, or spending more money, or sleeping more or less, or being on my phone more or less. There are all different ways that we can earmark how we're regulating our behavior. But for the most part, my food was pretty stable, and I just changed how I was eating and didn't know how that would work with traveling and being with you. And like that worked out fine. We did talk about what we would do differently next time. And so once I collected all those data points, I'm like, yeah, I think I had a pretty good time. But it was funny because, you say things and I reflexively want to say them back. And I've started realizing that that's not like I left and you're like, I miss you. And I wanted to go like, I miss you too, but I didn't, because I was really focused on, I just want to get home. I want to get back into my routine. And once I get settled, then I may miss you. And I think initially I said to you, I miss being there with you, because that's what resonated for me, and how often and I don't think, if you would have asked me this 6 months ago, I wouldn't have even identified with this, but you often say things to me and I say it back, because that's what we're socially supposed to do. But I'm really seeing that doesn't fit for me, and my thinking and my processing is just very different.
Yeah. No, I like that. I mean, that's such a great question. Like, how do you know? Yeah. I guess, I don't know.
Yeah.
You coming back?
Yeah.
I mean, are you willing to do it again?
I am.
Then that's it.
I am. And what we talked about is maybe having it be for a little bit less time, and taking time where we can really go do some sightseeing and spend time doing stuff together, because the way our schedules were, it just really kind of tied us down. And I thought that just hanging out would be enough. And I really wanted more. And both times I've been there, like, I really want to do more shopping and kind of not touristy things, but getting souvenirs and having more time. And the day that we went out, I was tired. And I said to you, you were very kind. I knew that I was overextended, but it was the only day that we had together to do some souvenir shopping and see some sights. And I knew that I was pushing myself beyond what I needed to do, but it was the only day. And so that thing of, is there going to be a cost to this? And there was. The next day, I just was really exhausted. And we cut it short because I just hit a point where I knew this is not going to serve me. So being attuned to those things and communicating, I think, is also really important.
It is. And I mean, a lot of this is in the context where this is a really hard time in my life right now. So I remember thinking, like, this was almost like a mini retreat where there was a lot of sleeping, eating well, connection. Yes.
Yeah.
But, I know for myself, I enjoyed the trek that we did take, and then like the weather didn't cooperate. Like we had a lot of challenges that were not us that we had to navigate.
But I also feel like we cohabitated really well. And even little things like, you have a very small coffee pot and you drink regular and I drink decaf. So whoever would get up in the morning would make coffee for the other person, and then would clean out the coffee pot and make coffee for themselves. I mean, it's a little thing, but it was lovely in the morning if I got up and you had made me coffee. It just felt delicious. We did cooking together. We did meal planning together. For having things be, your kids coming, your kids being there, not being there. I think we did a really beautiful job of just coexisting, and that felt very peaceful and very harmonious.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I don't think I've talked about this, and if I haven't, it's a repeat. Forgive me. One of the things that I noticed is, because you have a basement and we don't have basements here in California, and I've always lived in a one-story home, except for one house for a very short amount of time. When I worked in the basement, because that's where your office is set up, I would hear all the sounds above me, and they were unfamiliar sounds, different house sounds, the dogs, the kids. And you have a ring light, which is very bright. And where I sit in my office, there's a window. So I have natural sunlight. I don't have to deal with artificial lighting because I'm not in a windowless basement. And I found that it was a little challenging. But then what I realized was, if I have so much energy during the day or during a session, there's a large proportionate of my energy that is hearing and noticing the bright lights, the sounds that are unfamiliar. And so by the time I'm done with the session, energy that I wouldn't normally use up was used up because of having to consciously filter out that sound, to not react, to not look, to not question. So the last day I was there, I worked up in the attic, which I found myself so much more relaxed, and my energy, I just had more, with the exception of the meltdown that I had at the end of the day, but that was due to something else. But the reason why I say this is, initially I was thinking, like, it's fine, I can manage, because I can tune it out and I can attend to my clients, but there is a cost. And what I would ask you, the listener, is, if you go to a restaurant and it's noisy, or you're somewhere where it's too bright, or there's a sound or a smell that is not pleasant for you, while you can manage, that is most likely using up a part of your energy, your focus, your attention, and will leave you more drained, which is often why we need downtime after we've been out in public. Our brains process 5 to 10 times more information than a neurotypical brain does. So thinking, noticing, processing, it's just going to take more energy. And I think we've gotten so accustomed, and I have, like, it's fine, I can manage. I don't want to ask for special things. I don't want to ask for accommodations. And like for your light, I kept tipping it back and back and back and back, and it still felt really bright. That's going to take some of my time and energy because it's hurting my eyes and it's uncomfortable.
Yeah. Context matters.
Yeah.
Environment, right. Yeah. Environmental stress and stuff. Absolutely. We're limited. That's okay.
Yeah. And I think it's hard that when you're with people that don't have those sensory sensitivities, they just don't understand. And they, we've gotten things of you're being sensitive, you're being picky, because other people don't have the ability to shift perspective. And maybe there are certain things that are really irritating, annoying to them that may not be sensory, but there may be something else. But because they don't have those sensitivities, it doesn't register in their brain. And so it's like we get these messages that we're being too much or too picky or too sensitive, but there's just not this awareness of how much of a drain it can be on us.
No, it really can be. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's all I have. Do you have anything else before we wrap up?
I don't think so, my dear. Till the next time.
All right. Sounds good. Have a great day.
Yeah, you too, love. Bye.
Bye. Hey again. If you are interested in working with Jen, you can reach out to her at jen@heartfulnessconsulting.com. If you're interested in working with me, you can reach out to me at unapologeticallysensitive.com. If you want to shoot me an email, I'm at unapologeticallysensitive@gmail.com. If you're interested in the next online HSP course, it is going to start February 5th, 2024, and it will go through April 15th. We're going to meet on Mondays from 3 to 4:20 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So please make sure that you consider the time zone that you're in. What is so powerful about these groups? The content, I think, is very good. The connection between other people, and what people say to me all the time is they've never been around other people that are wired like them. And we often feel like we're so good at attuning to other people. We've been told we're too much, we're too needy, we're too intense, we're too dramatic. And to be in a group of other people that share the same things. And because I've been running these groups for, I think, 5 years now, I'm going to toot my own horn here a little bit. I'm really good at connecting. And in the beginning, we go through some of the things that people have experienced. And I say, who else has experienced that? Hands go up. Who else has experienced that? Hands go up. Who else has experienced that? Hands go up. When you are part of a marginalized group, that sense of belonging and normalization and validation is really, really important. People often hate their sensitivity. They come to me because they don't want to be more sensitive. And what I tell them is, this is how you're wired. So let's figure out what's working and what's not working. I cannot change your sensitivity, but let's see what the gifts and strengths are around it. Let's see the things that you struggle with and figure that out. And it's really interesting. There's a lot going on in my life, and hopefully I'll bring you up to speed as we record more episodes. There's a lot going on, and there have been quite a few hiccups and bumps. I am just seeing myself. let me tell you what I'm going to say, and then I'll tell you the gremlin that came in. Navigating through things with more ease, and I'm trying to think of what the word is. Feeling comfortable in my skin and knowing when something is not right and saying it, and not coming from a place of temper. The reason why I laughed is every time I tell you that things are going well, some bump, hiccup comes up that I don't navigate as well. So I just want to name what that is. But it has been really interesting, and a couple things happened recently. And in the moment, I said, that was a really terrible position you put me into. What were you thinking? Or to say, I was just telling you about not feeling attuned to, and you just did this thing where you didn't attune to me, and that felt really hurtful. So I really see a shift of starting to own who I am, feel more empowered, navigate through difficult situations. It is not perfect. I still get upset. I still cry. I feel angry, hurt, disappointed, sad, lonely. That's part of the human experience. But I really do see a shift, and that is what I see coming out of these groups. The current group just finished, and they've decided to extend for an extra 5 weeks because they're really enjoying the connection. So what do we cover in the online HSP course? We have 10 weeks. We cover mindfulness and self-compassion. identifying negative messages and turning them into your strengths, perfectionism, embracing our emotions, self-care is non-negotiable, boundaries, communication, authenticity, and vulnerability, expectations and disappointments, and creating a lifestyle that honors the HSP or the neurodivergent person. There are a ton of podcast episodes that I've done. Not all of them are on my website, but if you go to my website to unapologeticallysensitive.com, there's a tab for the HSP groups. And if you click on it, there are little 1-minute audio clips. There's a video. There are podcast episodes if you're someone who likes to gather information. Not all of the episodes are there, but a good handful. Registration will start January 10th and go through January 16th. Early registration will be $675. So that's $67.50 for a 1 hour and 20 minutes. That is a great price. If you go to anybody for therapy, you're going to be paying much more than that. And the group is limited to 8 people. Registration will continue from January 17th to January 24th at $700. There will be a registration button on my website because there were major problems last time and they took the whole HSP page down when I opened registration. We're going to make sure that doesn't happen again this time. I'm going to do everything I can to hope it doesn't happen again. I would love to have you there. I think it's a really powerful experience. I love running groups. I just can't say enough about it. I think that's all I have to say. Remember, sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. It's how you were wired. You have a right to be here. You have a right to take up space. You have a right to all of your feelings. You can feel angry, frustrated, lonely, sad, disappointed, irritable, joyful, content, peaceful. All of the feels are okay. You have a right to take up space. It's okay for people to wait for you. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to show up messy and imperfect, to not have your stuff together, to be emotional, to ask for things, to ask to have your needs met. Being human is okay. I hope you're doing well. I think that's it. Have a blessed day.